What's going on, everyone? And I want to say happy early Merry Christmas from all of us here at Total Sports Talk. This is a time of year where we get together as families, friends, loved ones, and we celebrate Christmas or Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever maybe your religion or what you celebrate. But we want to wish you, first and foremost, a Merry Christmas from the three of us. But even though Christmas is coming and is right around the corner, it still doesn't mean that sports isn't happening. I mean, we've got bowl games, we've got NFL games, we've got free agency. There is just always something going on, and that is exactly what we're going to cover today. I am your host, Matthew Raridan, and beside me are my co-hosts, David Street.
What's up, everybody?
And Ed Smith.
Welcome.
Well, guys, I want to say as well to you, Merry Christmas, and I appreciate all that you guys do for this show and all the content for our audience as well. So, Merry Christmas to you guys.
Merry Christmas to
Merry
you as
Christmas.
well.
And now I just want to start talking about this big free agency contract that just happened. I mean, we just had breaking news last night. I even wrote an article about this. So if you guys are on American Daily Press, please check out the article I just wrote. But the Dodgers just made a very big acquisition straight from Japan, and that is none other than Yoshinobu Yamamoto. And you're probably wondering who? I mean, if you're not maybe a big baseball fan, you're probably wondering, all right, who is this guy? Well, actually, a lot of people want to know who this guy is. And he has yet to even throw a single pitch in the Major League Baseball. Yet, he just got the biggest contract ever for a pitcher in Major League Baseball. So, right there, I mean, that you may scratch your head wondering, well, why the heck did they do that? This guy was a stud in Japan. And if you haven't seen the recent success of Shohei Ohtani, oh yeah, the Dodgers signed him too. Then now you see why teams are so high on talent that's coming out of Japan. I mean, we all saw it with Ichiro. Ichiro is amazing. I mean, he was just this guy that came into the MLB, and I mean, he moved mountains. He really did for Japan. And now we have Yamamoto, who just signed with the Dodgers for a 12-year, $325 million contract. I mean, that's humongous. I mean, it's not as big, obviously, as the 10-year, $700 million deal that Ohtani just got, but that's still really big for a guy who hasn't even played in the majors yet. We have seen this before with Daisuke with Boston. We've talked about this on the show as well. But the contract itself, 12 years, $325 million with a $50 million sign-on bonus. So he's getting paid the second he signs that contract, $50 million. Welcome to the USA. And he's going to have opt-outs in his contract, but they will not kick in until after the 2029 season and the 2031 season. So, I mean, that's still several years away. So he is locked in on the Dodgers until then. And he's fine with that, is almost kind of what I'm hearing. The Dodgers had to pay a $51 million posting fee to Japan, to the Oryx Buffaloes, which is a team that he played for. So, I mean, the Dodgers are forking out money. I mean, I really want to know where they're getting this money from. But if you've seen recently with the Ohtani contract, they have already made so much money off of merchandise sales and tickets already, and they haven't even played a game yet. So they are reeling in the money. But why LA? Why did Yamamoto choose LA? There could be several factors, but I think the number one factor is right now LA has this win mentality. And they showed that with Ohtani's contract, with the deferment and spending less money right now on him for the next 10 years. It gives them more money to spend on others. So Ohtani and the Dodgers were in agreement with that because they want to win right now. And who else do they want? No other is they sign Yamamoto. And this is what they wanted, and they showed that completely. They did this better than any other teams out there. In the end, it came down to the Yankees, the Mets, and the Dodgers for Yamamoto. The Yankees offered 300 million. The Mets offered 325. The Dodgers matched that. And to Yamamoto, it became a no-brainer decision because the Dodgers are showing that they want to win now. Will they win now? We don't know. Only time will tell if that will happen. But so far, they have signed over $1 billion in contracts right now. So Dodgers want to win now, and I truly believe that's why he chose LA. And I mean, I him and Ohtani know each other as well, and I'm sure that also is a nice bargaining chip to have. Someone who speaks your language, someone that you already know on a personal level as well. You're coming to a new country for the first time. It's going to be weird. And well, Ohtani went through that as well. Now he could help accustom you. So, Ed, I want to, ask you, did the Dodgers somehow find kind of like a loophole to help them with this? I mean, like I said, over $1 billion here.
Well, it certainly seems that way. When you consider that the Dodgers themselves have set up currently at $208 million of salary, but yet they have more than $1 billion of contract sitting out there with just 4 players, really. 4 major stars on that roster. That even with all these deferments, let's kind of backtrack a second. Ohtani's getting a $680 million deferment on his contract, so he's only costing them $2 million out of $208 million on their current roster. That is peanuts, really, when you're talking about putting together a full team. So all these things are creating, these deferment contracts are creating more space, more cap, really, before you hit that salary tax level that the MLB imposes, with the possibility of, maybe going after somebody else. Who knows? Bellinger's still on the market. Why not bring him back into LA? Who knows? I don't. At this point, anything is possible. Now, when we're talking about those 4 players, Betts, Freeman, Ohtani, Yamamoto, their salaries together are actually more than 8 teams in Major League Baseball right now. You got Oakland, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Tampa, Milwaukee, Miami, Cleveland, Cincinnati, and only $2 million away from what Washington is spending in their salary for just 4 players on that roster. That is tremendous. But that goes back to what you were saying, Matthew, about they want to win now. They don't care what it costs because they can afford it. They're the prices for being a fan of the Dodgers, season tickets, merchandising, concessions, everything in and around, going to the Dodgers stadium. And that's not a stadium that stays empty most of the time. That stadium is still full despite what the cost is getting into it. So they have money. Don't worry about them. Don't feel bad for them at all. But what they've done is they have created kind of this extraneous way of doing contracts that really kind of punish those teams that do not have that free flow of cash to pay after these players are done with their contracts in their current state. So it is something that is a loophole, and it's just the nature of Major League Baseball at this point until they get something else worked out. But you see that in other leagues around the world. So it's not necessarily a loophole that is, foreign out there, but it is kind of different from what you see in other American sports leagues.
Yeah, I totally agree. But this deferment, I mean, they've came on to something that is just, it's been different. I mean, we have had deferments before, but nothing like this. I mean, this, like I said, was a huge bargaining chip. It really was, and
Mhm.
Otani made it clear also from the get go that he wants to win. And what way to show that? Let me defer most of my contract 10 more years. So that's what was crazy. I mean, the Giants offered Otani the same deal as well, but ultimately he chose the Dodgers. As far as the deferments goes, I don't know if the Giants offered him that, but they offered him the same amount of money, the same amount of years. So it just shows you that Andrew Friedman and the Dodgers, I mean, executive of the year already. I mean, I feel like I have to make that point.
One point I wanted to give is, yes, it's the largest contract for a pitcher ever at $325 million. Well, it's actually only $1 million more than what Garrett Cole's getting on an 8-year contract. So while year by year he's not costing the Dodgers as much, it is still a greater total than
Yeah.
what Garrett Cole is getting. But Garrett Cole is actually getting $36 million per year versus 27, which that's going to make a world of difference if there are some small pickups that the Dodgers need to help fill holes to finish out that roster through spring training.
Yeah, that AAV, I mean, it is completely different. I mean, that's actual money that you're each year you're getting. He just had the largest as far as if you look at the lump sum of the contract. So I appreciate you pointing that out, especially for the viewers. So he is not getting paid the most yearly, but he has the biggest contract of all time for pitchers. And I mean, Otani is also a pitcher, but he's pitcher slash DH. Well, he's DH for sure this year. So I mean, he's kind of up there in the running, in my opinion, as well. But as far as a straight pitcher, he does have that contract. But I mean, what about you, David? I mean, when you saw this news where you're like, oh, here we go again. We got the new Yankees with the Dodgers.
I mean, when I saw it, I mean, you guys remember what I said before, that I think the Dodgers are going to break the single season win record, and I think they're going to go 117-45. Well, this signing just further validates that for me. And listen, do I think the Dodgers are going to win the World Series this year? Probably not, but obviously I wouldn't be surprised if they did. But also speaking, I think they probably will win a World Series in a full season very soon, just because, when you stack up so much talent over the years, eventually the dam has to break. I mean, look at the Atlanta Braves in the 90s. Uber talented team, probably the most talented team of the 90s. They kept losing until they finally won it all in 95. Now, funny enough, actually, the Braves team back then and the Dodgers actually have quite a bit in common. They're both in the National League, and when the Dodgers broke through, basically, they did it in a shortened season. Well, the Braves broke through in a shortened season as well. But the difference is that the Braves played in an 144 game season, and the Dodgers played in a 60 game season. So the Braves still played in almost a full season as well. So probably not exactly the same. But listen, as I said, I don't think the Dodgers are going to win it all this year, but I'm telling you guys, this is going to be the best regular season team of all time. Certainly, at the very least, probably the best regular season team in modern history. That roster is that stacked. So don't be surprised if all of your team's favorite records, don't be surprised if they get shattered this year by the Dodgers.
Yeah, the Dodgers do have this stacked lineup, but they've had a lot of stacked lineups. And I know Dodger fans. My mom is a Dodger fan, and it's okay, great. We do great in the regular season, but what matters is postseason, and its patience is growing thin with Dodger fans because it happens every year. They do great in the regular season every year. They usually have the best record in the regular season, but they do go to the postseason, and we know what happens there. I think that they will eventually win a World Series, but it'll be without Dave Roberts. I really feel like that. I think he holds them back a little bit, and I think it's just showing that over the
I
years
agree.
that he continues to be holding them back to their full potential. But I mean, this year they went into the postseason. Their players just
Mhm.
didn't do any good, so that's not fully on him. But their players just didn't look the same.
Well, and also I will say one last thing that in fairness to Roberts, he has led them to much, much better regular season success than Mattingly ever did. But the problem, as we all know, is that Roberts overthinks like crazy in the postseason. It's like the guy doesn't trust his own instinct.
Yeah, and I know we talk a lot of football on this show, and the closest comparison that just off the top of my head of Dave Roberts is Mark Richt when he was at Georgia. I mean, he was right at the precipice with some of the best teams in the SEC, but could never get there, and it was just frustrating over time. Ryan Day is on that path right now, just not able to get there, even though he has a team that is right at the top with everybody else. It's just, like you said, it's very frustrating for Dodger fans to see to go through 6 months of 162 games and see 111 wins, but not see a ring on that finger.
Well, it's almost as worse as the Angels. I mean, the Angels had Otani, they had Trout, Anthony Rendon all at once, and they had nothing to show for it. They couldn't even make the playoffs. I mean, so when you look at that, you wonder, well, why did Otani choose the Dodgers when he literally was just playing with one of the best players of all time in Trout, and then Rendon? I mean, it's hard for him to stay healthy, but I mean, you had some of these best players that have played the game, and you still couldn't do anything. So what makes you think that you can with the Dodgers? But the Dodgers make the playoffs every year, and they have one of the best regular seasons every year. So it's like, just get us to that point, and then hopefully we could win from there, especially with me on the team. So maybe that's Otani's thought process, and same with Yamamoto, because they need something. They need something more momentum in the postseason because we know they're going to show up in the regular season because they always do. So they have a lot of years between these two big contracts. So they're bound to win the World Series, right? And they're also bound to sign another star because they have some more money to spend. So they've got some time, but the expectations is going to be high on them. It's going to be really high, not just on Roberts, but on the Dodgers organization itself, because you made these big time moves. You need to deliver now.
I do have a question for you guys, and feel free to jump in. What is it going to take for the big three on the East Coast to, keep up with the Joneses, so to speak, when it comes to buying a roster and bringing it out to the field? And when I say the big three on the East Coast, I'm talking the Yankees, Mets, and Red Sox.
Well, I think the Mets are a hopeless franchise, so we don't need to worry about those guys.
Yeah, as long as Cohen is there, I just the Mets they're just not a team that's proven. As far as the Red Sox and the Yankees go, they were always what the Dodgers are. I mean, I don't want to say always, but they were usually right there, and they have signed some big time people, but the Yankees, they haven't came through in a long time. So I think some players are kind of losing that hope. The Red Sox, I mean, they have won more recently than the Yankees have, but I don't really know exactly what it is that's deterring players from there because if you don't remember, Trey Turner. Trey Turner played for the Dodgers just 2 years ago, and he hated the West Coast. He's like, as a baseball player, and I think most baseball players will agree with me, it's better on the East Coast. He wanted to go back to the East Coast, and eventually he did with the Phillies. But I don't know if that's true. I mean, a lot of people aren't choosing these East Coast teams. At least, well, I don't say a lot of people. I mean, there's still plenty of people that are. But uh, the Dodgers, though, did get these guys, and there's definitely a reason why the Dodgers got them versus the Yankees, the Mets, and the Red Sox. So I don't know exactly what's going on there that's deterring them. I mean, the Mets, that's pretty obvious, but the Yankees and Red Sox, not quite sure.
Yeah, I always felt the Yankees were best when they paid their in-house talent when they got up to the big leagues and they were ready to start winning championships as a collective group. I think they were always better doing that, overpaying in-house development players, because that's where you had your Bernie Williams, your Jeters, your Mariano Rivera's, your all
Posada.
those guys.
Yeah.
Those all came through the Yankees organization. They weren't bought. They used to buy plugs for the holes in their roster. They didn't buy the team as a roster. So
Yeah.
I think that's the difference here from what the Yankees used to be to where they are now. The Dodgers, they're just flat out saying, "We're Hollywood, baby. This is what we do."
I'm guessing you probably didn't mention this certain team just because they've been doing really well lately. But if we had a Big Four in the East Coast, would you put the Phillies up there, Ed?
Uh, in talking about payroll manipulation, because that's kind of what we're talking about with what I spoke on, the loopholes of what the salary arbitration is. The Phillies, I don't think, run into that near as much as those three other teams. They don't sign nearly as big a checks as what and overpay for players nearly as much as what the Yankees, Mets, and Red Sox have, over the past 15 years, I would say.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it's only just been as recent, but I mean, it could be the same. Could almost be said with Atlanta too. I mean, I know we're talking more the East Coast up in the Northeast, but Atlanta is also over here, and uh, they are doing great with their in-house talent as well. I mean, they did get Matt Olson from the A's, and he's been a phenomenal acquisition. He filled in that hole very well once Freddie Freeman left. So Atlanta, expect them to still kind of be there, but just not spending as much as these other teams are. But you did hit the nail right on it, Ed. As far as the exception of A-Rod, the Yankees, I mean, that in-house talent. I mean, A-Rod did create a great or not atmosphere, but he filled in that position great for them, and they were great then. But since then, everything else that they've tried to fill in there with Giancarlo Stanton, Anthony Rizzo, it's just not going to cut it anymore.
I mean, Aaron Judge is an in-house talent.
Yeah. That,
And he's the best player on their roster by far. So, that there's something to be said for that. They just don't have the patience to do it. That's a big part of it. It's the patience in an organization, especially when you're talking about baseball that has 6 different levels of baseball within the organization. And we just see the major leagues on our television screens and reading in the newspapers. We don't see about these rookie leagues that are out there and the development of these players as easily. It's not that you can't find it, but you can't find it near as easily as you see major league players on your screen every day, all day.
Yep, and that fan base is growing really weary because of that. They're also impatient because, just like I said with the Dodgers.
Yeah. Just real quick, you had mentioned the A's. Fun fact: the A's currently only have a $14 million payroll for their ball club, for their roster.
Yeah, I was getting ready to throw that out as well. Not that stat, but actually before the show, my brother sent me a message, and since 2013, the A's have spent less than the Dodgers have just on 2 players this year. So, I mean, since 2013, it's been 10 years. So, I mean, that money ball is really working for them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Great turnaround last year.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So,
Las
but
Vegas, where I come.
But there's been a lot more that's been happening that's even crazier than this contract, and I mean it when I say that this is a crazier situation. And the fact of the matter, a lot of people probably don't even know what's going on with this, and that makes it even more crazier. But right now, Florida State University, they just keep catching L's from being snubbed from the college football playoff to now dealing with an ugly divorce with the ACC. Florida State had to have this emergency meeting where they are trying to leave the ACC, and rightfully so. The ACC is just clutching onto their leg as they're trying to swim afloat, and they're pulling them down. And when I say that, I'm talking about money. It's all about money. And we've talked about on here plenty times before college football being a business. And it is. There is no hiding that. It is a business, and schools are trying to survive. And Florida State is doing that, and rightfully so. Right now, the ACC is nowhere near the SEC and the Big Ten when it comes to revenue. They are just they lack that. The ACC just isn't getting viewerships like the SEC and the Big Ten are, and Florida State truly believes that they deserve better than this. So they had to have this meeting. Turns out, well, Florida State's suing the ACC. Well, guess what? The ACC is suing Florida State. This is just getting uglier and uglier by the moment. Florida State wants out. Well, how much is that out going to cost them? Well, $572 million is how much it's going to cost them. $130 million of that is the TV buyout. So where does this money, it's just crazy where this money comes from. We know universities are swimming with money, but $572 million for this buyout is insane. And there's a lot more that comes to this, and I urge you to look up these articles and read more about it because it's crazy. Florida State is suing from a Florida standpoint, so they filed their suit in the state of Florida. The ACC, however, is filing their suit in the state of North Carolina. And there is a reason for that. And it's because of the laws that are in Florida. It benefits Florida State. It does not benefit the ACC. So no wonder the ACC wants to file this lawsuit in North Carolina. But it's just really crazy, guys. It really is. $572 million. And Florida State has reached out to private equity firms like JP Morgan Chase to help when it comes to these buyouts. I mean, that's how crazy this is getting. So, but I don't know. This situation is insane on all levels, but I really want to hear your guys' opinion on this. I mean, David, where does Florida State go to from here? And what about the ACC and the other schools?
Well, you know what this is, guys? This is karma biting Florida State back in the ass. Because you guys need to remember that Florida State actually had an opportunity to go into the SEC, but Bobby Bowden specifically did not want that. He literally admitted that, like I said, they had an opportunity to go to the SEC, but he did not want to go to the SEC because the path to national championships would have been more difficult. Now, kudos to Bobby Bowden because, back then it definitely worked. They won a title in the ACC under Bobby Bowden. So you certainly can't blame the man for making the obvious smart business decision. But like I said, now karma is biting Florida State back in the ass. All right. And I don't think Florida State is going to leave the ACC anytime soon. I know they really want to, but what'd you say, Matthew? $572 million just to leave? Like, are we sure they're going to be willing to pay that? No, I don't think Florida State. I could be wrong, but I don't think the Seminoles are gonna want to pay that. No matter how much they want to leave, and things are just gonna continue to get messy between FSU and the ACC. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the ACC commissioner instructed the refs to call bad games against the Noles. Of course, he'll never admit that publicly, but I think we've all been fans long enough, guys, to know that there's a lot of shady stuff that goes on. That's implied. So yeah, I think this is just this is just a messy situation that's going to keep getting messier. And as a Florida fan, I absolutely love it.
Well, if Florida State is not going to pay that $572 million, and that's their point. That's why they're suing the ACC. They're like, there's no way we're paying $572 million. And that's why I talked about it, why it matters with the state of Florida. They have what is called a sunshine state law. And I'd have to look more into that, but that is one of the key reasons why Florida State is suing the ACC, because of that egregious $572 million penalty. I mean, we say buyout, but this is a penalty. And there's just so much more that goes into it itself. But
Yeah.
yeah, what were you going to say, David?
Yeah, no. One last thing, just in case an FSU troll comments, "Oh, you're a Florida fan, buddy. I know my team is a joke. Okay, you don't need to remind me. And we're rivals. I have the right to make fun of you guys, and you have the right to make fun of us. That's how rivalries work. That's all."
That is true. But Ed, I'm dying to hear your comments on this too.
Well, just kind of going back to how this all got started for Florida State, they actually started looking into this in August of last year, to see what the contract looked like, to see if it was ironclad or not. And the phrase that keeps getting thrown out there is grant of rights. The grant of rights that Florida State has within the ACC is equal to everybody else that's in the conference. But yet Florida State is by far the most marketable team in the conference, which means they get all the higher grossing spotlight games, and airtime for the network, whether it be on ESPN or local or however. So that's a big part of it. The ACC did file its injunction in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina, where the offices of the ACC are, because they were using the laws of North Carolina to write this contract for these schools to sign on to. And, that's where the fight's going to be as far as the courts are concerned. But you're going to talk about a conference that is teetering on the brink. If you take out the biggest domino within the conference, you're going to start to, lose the value of what was being out there. Part of the argument that Florida State has is the fact that ACC is not allowing them to gain more money as more money's coming in. They wanted a growing number, just like SEC and the Big Ten. The ACC is not allowing that to happen. So, all that aside, if Florida State, does get their way, let's just call it. If Florida State gets their way, I see that there could be I hate to use the word collapse, but there would be a split of the ACC. And when I think of the ACC, I think football and basketball schools. Half of the schools being football schools. We're talking Florida State, Miami, Clemson, Pittsburgh, Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, and Boston College. And sitting out there's Notre Dame. They've got ties to it. Basketball schools being Duke, North Carolina, Syracuse, Louisville, Virginia, Wake Forest, and NC State. Wouldn't the Big 12 love to have those basketball schools? Because the Big 12 right now looks, if you just look at it, looks like they're gearing themselves to be the basketball conference in the country. Nobody else would be able to touch them. So if they added Duke, North Carolina into the same conference as Kansas
and Houston,
Oh my goodness, that would
Yep.
be insane. But if that happens, the football schools have to split out too. And with those teams that I mentioned, wouldn't it be interesting to have an independent conference of just those football schools, which kind of leads into what Chip Kelly was talking about last week that we covered a few days ago, leading into more that broader college football playoff levels of schools out there, put those big schools in those independent columns and then, have everybody play everybody as opposed
So
to having the conference being set up regionally. Regionally up until, here recently.
So do you guys think that the ACC might suffer a Pac-12-esque collapse, or do you think it won't get that bad?
It's out there, but it's going to take the courts to have that come about, because if Florida State winds up being able to leave because they are not getting those growing dollars that everybody signed the contract for, then I can see these other schools looking to get the same kind of deal, and having either the ACC accommodate that and amend the contract that was signed, just in 2017, I believe it was
2016.
2016.
Mhm.
That's supposed to go through 2037. So so I can see that ACC either having to break its own rules, or everybody, just say, you know what, you're not doing the schools any favors. So we're out of here. We're going to go to a conference or make our own uh, in a way that is more beneficial for the schools and not just that conference office.
Yeah, definitely.
The last
Yeah.
part of it is the fact that Stanford, Cal, and SMU are being added to the ACC. So there's no idea where they're going to go if anything like this takes place.
Yeah, I mean, Ed had said it perfectly when he talked about the courts. We have to see kind of what's going on with the courts, because keep in mind the ACC right now still has the longest left in their contract than the rest of the conferences. Then that's what the Pac-12 then lacked, and that was what was able to kind of break that, like an iceberg was the whole TV deals and the contracts that they had set in place. So we saw from the Pac-12 to the Pac-2, now it's the West Coast Conference, and I can see it similarly happening to the ACC. But when it comes to these deals, these contracts they have, we have to wait to see what the courts say, because if the courts say no, then it's going to be very tough for that to happen. I mean, $572 million is a lot of money.
Hey, I'm not going to take credit for these because I think I've seen these before, but the ACC should probably officially change their name to the All Coast Conference, or the Across the Country Conference, with the addition of SMU and Stanford.
Yeah, the Pacific Coast, Stanford, Palo Alto.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but Florida State, I mean, they declined, some of these schools to come over because they felt that it wasn't equitable for the
Hmm.
ACC, and they have a point, they really do, but yeah, that's the whole point of all of this too, is equitable. That Florida State is just not making what they feel like they should, and I mean, keep in mind, guys, Clemson was also one of the top schools there too, and they've had a very quiet last couple of years, but they could easily be back on top. And I mean, how are things going to go when that happens? And if Florida State somehow leaves, if all this works out for Florida, does Clemson leave? And then we just talked about it last episode, Miami, the number like 3 recruiting class in the country, happens with them. I mean, there can be a very serious domino effect if this happens. So continue to look out on this situation. It is very big, and it's continuing. Coverage is happening daily, so look for those live updates.
You
But
thought last summer was nutty. Wait until this happens.
Yeah.
yeah, yes. But speaking of nutty, there's no crazier places to be than on the infamous street corner. And today, David's got some business he needs to take care of on that street corner.
Well, on my corner, I usually take the time to rip on somebody, but I'm actually going to take the time to give props to somebody. And let me say that as a Bucks fan, I'm probably biased when I say this. I'm admittedly biased when I say this, but I firmly believe that Antoine Winfield Jr. is the best safety in the league. The guy has risen from a very, very good rookie to excellent to elite and the best safety in the league, in my opinion. For starters, let's look at his numbers. All right. He's the only safety, and for the record, the only player in the league to have at least 100 tackles, at least 10 passes defended, and at least 5 forced fumbles. He is the first safety in 7 seasons to have at least 5 forced fumbles. All right. Now, other numbers as well. He's allowing a 63.4 completion percentage, 338 yards, an 85.2 passer rating, and he's allowed 2 touchdowns. Now, are any of these numbers tops in the league? No, they are not. But consider this. The Bucks have faced 5 top 10 offenses. So when you put that into context, then the numbers look more impressive. Let's talk about the tackles, because in my opinion, Antoine Winfield Jr. is bar none the best tackling safety in the league, and I will get to that in just a bit. Winfield Jr., for the record, leads the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in tackles, which is very rare for a defensive back. Now, do you, as a defense, do you want a defensive back leading your team in tackles? Probably not. And also, oftentimes, players amass a ton of tackles simply because their defense is on the field a lot. And for the record, I believe the Bucks are a bottom 10 in time of possession, so their defense is on the field a lot. So does that inflate Winfield's tackling? Sure, maybe a little bit, but I don't think you should hold it against him, because at the end of the day, guys, the reason why Winfield has a ton of tackles is because he is efficient. Now, before I mentioned that I believe Winfield is the best tackling safety in the league. And why do I believe that? Because of all the safeties that have at least 100 tackles, Winfield has the least amount of missed tackles and the lowest missed tackle percentage. He has 107 tackles out of a possible 111 tackles. All right. He's making 96% of his tackles, which is absolutely phenomenal. The guy is a game changer, and that's just the thing. I can think of a couple of games where momentum shifted in our favor strictly because of Antoine Winfield Jr. For instance, at the New Orleans Saints, he forced a fumble with over 30 seconds left going into a halftime. The Bucks scored to go up double digits, and they didn't look back since. And recently against the Atlanta Falcons, he had a strip sack against Desmond Ridder, which forced a safety going into a halftime. Now, look, is Antoine Winfield going to win Defensive Player of the Year? Probably not. It is very, very rare these days for a defensive back to win Defensive Player of the Year. Although Stephon Gilmore, who is a cornerback, did win it recently. But as a safety, the last safety who won it all, or excuse me, won Defensive Player of the Year was Troy Polamalu, as you know, Matthew, back in 2010. Now, am I saying that Antoine Winfield Jr. is far and away the best safety in the league? No, I don't think he's far and away the best safety in the league. And in fact, I think you can make arguments for other safeties like Jesse Bates of the Atlanta Falcons, Minkah Fitzpatrick, as I'm sure you'll make a great argument for him, Matthew, and also Derwin James of the Chargers. But I do believe that when you look at the numbers, when you look at the teams that the Bucks have faced, and when you look at the overall impact I do believe that Winfield Jr. is the best safety in the league, and there is a reason. Whether you like Pro Football Focus or not, there is a reason why they give Antoine Winfield Jr. a grade of just under 92. But Matthew, I'm sure you're going to disagree with me. And like I said, Minkah Fitzpatrick has a great case as well. And I would just like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, growing up and especially being a Steeler fan, I was spoiled to watch Troy Polamalu play the game. I think actually most of the NFL was, spoiled to watch him play. But on top of that, I was also spoiled twice a year to watch Ed Reed play. And these were two safeties at the same time in the NFL. And it doesn't get any better than that. I'm talking about hard hitting Ed Reed and the Tasmanian Devil Troy Polamalu. And they spoiled us week in and week out, being in every single play you can imagine. And I almost kind of want to piggyback, though, on your point, David, of that's what I see in Antoine Winfield. I really do. I see a guy that is involved in every single play, and that's what I would see every week with Troy Polamalu. You couldn't miss his hair. That's how you knew he was in every play, because you saw that luscious head and shoulders flow in every single play. And that's just, I mean, that's how the game was with him, but that's what I see with Antoine Winfield. But I do see the same with Minkah Fitzpatrick. The thing is, though, is Minkah Fitzpatrick is not on that same level this year. He has battled injuries, and this Steelers team is struggling to even find their identity, and even on defense. And that's saying something when you have that in the same sentence as Pittsburgh Steelers. It's kind of weird. But Minkah Fitzpatrick, when he came to the Steelers from the Dolphins, he made an immediate impact, and I mean an immediate impact. And the Steelers defense all of a sudden was clicking. We had the best turnover ratio in the league the second Minkah Fitzpatrick came here. And there was just something about it that what he brought to the field was turnover, turnover, turnover. And as a defense, as a team, you love that when your defense is creating turnovers, because it gives your offense even more chances to be in the game, to stretch the lead or catch up. So Minkah Fitzpatrick is that type of playmaker. And the thing with this, what he's struggling with the Steelers right now is he's been that free safety type, but he's also been that strong safety type with the Steelers. And they didn't want him necessarily to be that strong safety type, because he was making the most tackles on running plays for the entire Pittsburgh Steelers was him. You don't hear that as a safety. You think of linebackers stuffing the run, not a safety, unless you're Jamal Adams or someone like that. But they didn't want him because he's not as big as guys like Winfield. And they wanted him to be that ball hawk center fielder free safety. So he has been doing that role more, but he's been hurt a lot more this year. But I still think Minkah Fitzpatrick should be in that consideration for top 3 safeties in the year. Who else is he battling it with? Well, none other than Derwin James. And I'd want to say Ed probably has a few things to say about that.
Well, Derwin James certainly has made a name for himself, over the past few years. But I'm actually I went back and I looked, and we mentioned a lot of great safeties here. But let me throw one at you that's a little bit under the top names that you would initially talk about. And that's Jevon Holland, the snowman. Yep. Since he came in the league 3 years ago, he has forced 8 turnovers from that free safety and then moved in a strong safety position. And when you're talking about a team like the Dolphins, he's not required to be that in the line of scrimmage type safety that you guys are talking about, which to your point, Matthew, I grew up watching Rod Woodson as a safety. That was safety play at its best, in my opinion. But back to Jevon. He's out there roaming the field, making sure that nothing gets behind him, because he's playing within the confines of what that team structure is. It's not necessarily to be that hard hitting, tackle for loss guy. He is averaging 7 tackles a game, and he does have a interception return for a touchdown this year with 3 forced fumbles. So he is doing the job. He's just making sure that nothing gets past him, and that's the job of that safety in that team, with the way that team is built, because you have so many things on the offensive side to grow the lead. You just need the defense not to give up those big plays. And when you're playing risk reward with your safeties, you can lose some games, you can win some games, but what you're not going to do is basically beat them deep and lose the lead that your offense is already giving you. So I think Jevon Holland is a name to keep up with as we get further down the line, especially with this run that the Dolphins are on this year. And he's really going to become important once we get into the postseason, because that's when I think we really are going to see the best of him against that upper tier competition, as they get to the different rounds of the playoffs this year.
Let me ask you guys this, since we are talking about safeties. And Matthew, I think I know what your answer is going to be, and it'll be a valid answer, of course. But who do you guys think is the best safety of all time? And I'll go first. I think it's Ed Reed. I mean, when I think of safeties that impacted the game, safeties that were an absolute nightmare for quarterbacks, for opposing offensive coordinators, Ed Reed almost always comes to top of my mind.
Yeah, Ed Reed also is for me too, and that's hard to say as a Steelers fan. Troy Polamalu is also up there. They were 2 different styles. That's the thing when it came to them, is they were 2 different styles. They sure as heck could both tackle. That they do have that in common, and they were turnover machines. But yeah, there was something about Ed Reed that made him phenomenal. And I'm thinking of someone else too, and I could have the name wrong, but is it Ronnie Lott for the 49ers? He was also up there as one of the best safeties of all time, and I think Ed was just about to say that.
The dude cut off a finger so he could play.
Yeah. They're not built like that.
How great is that? I mean, terrible for him and his hands, but yeah. I was, because I have a little bit more experience in football than you guys, a little bit longer.
You have more wisdom than we do.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much for that. There are 3 names that come to mind immediately for me, and that's Ronnie Lott, that is John Lynch, and I just had it, and I mentioned Rod Woodson already.
Yeah.
There's one more that's out there that was just on the tip of my tongue, but if you're talking about those 3 guys, Ed Reed looked up to those guys. Mm-hmm. That, for me, when you're talking about some of the best players that have ever played the game, who did they look up to mirror when it came to their game? And if you go ask Ed Reed today, who did you watch to become a better football player? I'm sure he's going to tell you Rod Woodson, John Lynch, and Ronnie Lott. Case closed.
Yeah, and a big reason of what made Ed Reed so great is that he studied like no tomorrow. Like, he took every single quarterback seriously. I watched an interview with Ed Reed where he was asked the question of were there any quarterbacks that you were nervous against, or you weren't nervous against? It might not have been that question, but I do remember him saying that he took every single offense, he took every single quarterback, no matter what their skill level was, he took them all seriously, and that was a huge reason of why he was so great.
Yeah, no, he truly was great. But I'm glad, Ed, that you had mentioned Jevon Holland, because I already had his name ready, queued up. Just, if for some reason you didn't mention him, but we're not short on talent at safeties. I mean, we already mentioned the Derwin Jameses, Minka Fitzpatrick, Antoine Winfield, Javon Holland, Justin Simmons, Jesse Bates. I mean, the list goes on and on right now of safeties that are just pure talent out there on the field. I mean, we are also still spoiled to watch these type of safeties. I mean, Simmons, on the other hand, I mean, he's suspended left and right because of how physical he plays. But that's how Ed Reed played. Honestly, I mean that's how they all used to play. We do live in a different time where safety is important. I do want to make that clear. Safety is important, but it is getting more and more like two-hand touch flag football with a lot of the concerns that are happening right now. But we are not short on talent in the safety field whatsoever. So I'm glad that you brought Javon Holland. I mean, I'm an Oregon fan, so of course I knew a guy was going to ball out in the NFL. He's a stud, and I really like what he's doing over there in Miami. It seems like such a great system, a great fit for him. Different shade of orange, kind of like a teal, or sorry, different shade of green, more like a teal color he's wearing. But it is nice to see success from Oregon players in the NFL, and he is one of them. So I'm glad that you brought his name up. But that is about all we have today for you guys, folks. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, we want to wish you a Merry Christmas. And with that being said, we are going to enjoy our time with our families on Monday, just as we hope that you guys will be doing the same. We will be back on our normal show come Wednesday, but Monday is time that we should be spending with our family, our loved ones, and friends. So we hope that you guys will be doing the same. We appreciate all your guys' support. This has been a great starting year for us. We are really looking forward to what 2024 brings to us here at Total Sports Talk. And that all begins with you guys. So continue to hit that like, subscribe button, share these videos, put in the comments how you guys are feeling, your thoughts on who you think is the top safety of all time, and just how you're feeling about Florida State's situation, the ACC, how ugly that is, and well, the $1 billion team, the LA Dodgers. So please continue to put those in the comments. But till next time, guys, we are rounding third and we are headed for home.
Merry Christmas, y'all.
Merry Christmas. Ho, ho, ho.